Hi everyone, Gavin Powers here. Welcome to Writing Tip Tuesday. I am the author of the Adventures of INFA series and founder and writing coach at Soul Sisters Write. Thanks so much for joining me. I had a completely different setup going on just a couple minutes ago, and Facebook said, no, you can't do it that way. So I just had to quickly turn everything around, and now I'm here with all of you. So it's great to see you. Thanks for joining me. I've got an exciting live talk for you tonight. It's all about surrendering. And some of you remember me posting about surrendering on my Instagram page over at soul_sisters_write. And it was really interesting because I made a post about surrendering, and it actually inspired this talk tonight, and I've gotten lots of questions and comments, and so I just wanted to address it just a little bit more because it seems to be a topic on a lot of people's lips just in general in terms of life and living and surrendering. I know Brené Brown has done some wonderful videos and books on the whole topic, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit. And surrendering, actually, it goes a lot into your writing as well. And so if I remember the quote that I put in, let me see if I can, actually I can't, I've got it set up right now. I'm just going to try to remember it, but I said something on my Instagram quote about surrender, because once you surrender the story that you want to write, you give way to the story that you get out of your, oh my gosh, I'm totally hacking what I wrote. Let me go ahead and pull it up for you because it's going to be so much better if I just read it to you straight instead of just fumbling my way through it. So let me get it for you. Here we are. Here we go. Okay, here it is. Surrender. When you surrender to your story, you stop fighting how you want to tell your story and embrace how it wants to be told. So that is surrendering to me. For me, I wrote that because I find that so many times I try to push so hard with what I'm writing, and no, I have this in mind. I really want to do it this way. And the reality is that a lot of times it's better if I just release it and let it go, and then the answer comes to me. So if I just surrender the issue that I'm working with in terms of story, the answer will later come to me, or I'll get a better answer later on. And we'll talk a little bit. I'll give you more specific examples on that in just a little bit. But that was really the spark that got me to writing this, because I got quite a few comments on my Instagram post about that, and then people started writing me and asking me to talk a little bit more about surrendering. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about surrendering. I know a lot of you like Brené Brown, so we're going to talk about her as well because she's got some great insight into that. And so let's get going. I have my notes right over here because I wanted to make sure I really touched upon a lot of these things for you. So before we get into surrendering and how you surrender, let's talk about the difference between surrendering and giving up. So there's a great article online. Again, I'm going to pull this up for you here. And this is at the mindbodygreen.com website. And it talks about surrendering versus giving up. And so and the title of the article is How to Know If You're Surrendering or Giving Up and Why It Matters. So surrendering is definitely different than giving up. Giving up is you're finished, you're done. Brené Brown, she describes giving up as after something emotional, you're just done. And surrendering, it tends to be more of a thoughtful process that comes along, and you sort of weigh the options and things, and then you look at it and you go, okay, and then you make thoughtful decisions based upon it. For me personally, when I think about surrendering, for me, how it feels when I'm writing and I'm surrendering, it feels like I'm sort of, instead of trying to fight so hard and control it so much, I just kind of take a step back and I go, okay, so what are the possibilities here? What are the things that could happen? And what is my intuition telling me? What is really trying to come forth? What are the thoughts I keep having over and over in my mind? Or what are the images that keep coming back over and over again? And then I just kind of sit with that and see what resonates and percolates and rises to the top, like the cream of all those ideas. You know how the cream rises to the top. So I think that, sorry, I got a little notice right there. For me, that's how surrendering works, and it came after years of really fighting with my stories. So story is not a lot unlike just living life, because it's if we apply it to our everyday lives, like me going through life, I love to plan things and have things controlled in a certain way, and the reality is that I operate better in life when I have things planned and everything else, but then I leave myself some room to play and improvise and go with better choices as they come up. So I do that with my storytelling as well. I have a solid structure. I know where I want to write, and then within that framework, I allow myself to play. So how does surrendering come into all of that? Let's talk a little bit more about that. So we talked about giving up and surrendering, and giving up would be just, I'm done with this. I'm just going to throw this chapter away. It's just not working. And surrendering is, hey, this chapter may not be working now, but let me kind of sit with it and see what's working within it, what's not working. I can get rid of the things that are not working, and then I can sort of like percolate and feel into what I need to spend more time with, or what I need to develop more. And so that for me is really surrendering when I'm writing. And we'll talk more about specific examples in just a little bit. So Brené Brown, she has a video, she has a TED Talk, and it's on YouTube. You can go ahead and check it out. It's called The Power of Vulnerability, and it's just phenomenal. And if you haven't heard of Brené Brown before, she's just absolutely amazing. She is a social worker who talks about shame, and shame is actually a really key piece to understanding your characters as well. And so she talks about that, and we'll talk about that in another video another time. And we actually go into it more in my e-courses that I'm writing. So Soul Sisters Write a Book, and we go into shame and all that. And it's just such an important part of your character's development. And the more you understand about yourself, the more that you work through the stuff that you're going through, the more authentic your characters, your story, your choices, all of that will be, because when you understand yourself better, you'll understand your choices for your characters better, and it all will come together. So it's kind of like, as you're working on your characters and as you're working on stories, you're also doing self-development on yourself. So, yay! Or, Brené Brown said that when she was studying shame, she thought, oh, this will be so great. I'll just study shame for like a year, and I'll just knock it out, and it'll be great, and it'll be done. And then she started really getting into it, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is really intense. And she asked a few of her friends, hey, do you have a good therapist that I can talk to about this? Because she really felt like she was not, she had some work to do, and she wasn't sure how to deal with it, because all of this stuff was coming up. And she realized that a lot of times, she realized that she had to do work on it. And what I'm saying is, a lot of times when we're working on things within our work, especially if you're a writer or you're dealing with certain themes, you really have to dig deep within yourself, and you have to start getting really honest with yourself and mine those hard places within yourself to really understand where they're coming from, why they're coming from. And when you start understanding more of those pieces about yourself, you'll start understanding more about others. So it's actually really, really helpful. I can apply that on there. So, so Brené Brown, I recommend you go ahead and watch one or several of her videos, read some of her books. She's pretty amazing. Surrendering. So let me give you, let me tell you, actually, before I give you some examples, let me just tell you what Brené found so challenging when she was dealing with this. So the word vulnerability kept coming up over and over and over again. And when you write, if you want to write from a authentic place, if you want your characters to have true voices that really resonate with readers and audiences and things, you have to be vulnerable. And the more vulnerable you are with yourself and going to those places and asking yourself if this is true, you can do that more with your characters. And so vulnerability is, it can be a very scary place, but it's also a very empowering place, because once you go there to those vulnerable spots that you're afraid of, you realize, hey, that didn't kill me, and I'm stronger now, and I can do this, and I can write about this character because I've been there, or I have this other experience, and it may not be the exact experience, but I can apply that over here to this character because I have this knowledge, and I can write from this vulnerable place, and that resonates with people. So being vulnerable is important. And you may want to have a good therapist, or yeah, I was gonna say, hopefully you're not drinking or adding more drinks. Here's have some water. This is water in here. Oh, that tastes so good. But yeah, being vulnerable is actually really important, and surrendering is really, really important. And here's some examples of what I did when I needed to surrender to my books or my stories or my scripts, and what I was doing before and then what I was doing afterwards, and how they changed. So when I first started writing back in my early 20s, I started writing because my mom had passed away, and I wanted to write a story that really honored her and talked about the lessons that I learned from her. And I was writing from a very, very raw place. I didn't have the skills that I do now. I did not go to grad school or even undergraduate, and I wasn't sure how to tell a story. I had raw ideas and raw thoughts, but I didn't know how to mold them or shape them or take people on a story to tell that story. All those skills developed later, but when I first started, everything was so raw within me, and it probably would have been better for me just to journal that information, but it was so raw. And when I finally decided to sit down to write a story, it was after that first attempt where it was just like really bad. I mean, imagine like your worst, it was like your worst first draft ever, and then times 10. Okay. That was my story. So, okay, we've got that. We're clear. So anything that you do probably cannot beat what I had written. So feel good about yourself. Okay. We all create crap sometimes. So let's see. So when I finally did get some good tools and tips from my teachers, I started writing a story, and instead of it being more of a memoir, I wrote it as more of a fiction story, and I made it sort of a wish fulfillment story. And for me, that was easier because I was able to create a character that was inspired by my mom. And it was like having my mom back there with me. And it was super easy to write her because putting sort of these qualities and it being inspired by her, it was easier to tap into my mom again. So, and it just, writing that whole process, just every time I write one of those books, that's my Adventures of Iona Faye series, every time I write one of those books, I get so happy because I feel like I'm tapping in with my mom again, and I get to remember all these wonderful things that she said and that we did, and then I change them into a fiction form, and I have some distance. So for me, that was surrendering. It was way too hard for me to write this raw, horrible story about, being a college student and caring for my mom when she had cancer and then she died, and like recovering from that. That was just too hard and raw for me. So instead, I wrote a fantasy story about a young girl who goes to Ireland looking for her missing mother, and then she finds her only to discover that she's lost to the fairy world. I'm not going to tell you the big reveals, but there's some fun ones in there. And being able to have that part and have wish fulfillment, because for me, wish fulfillment meant like if I could have anything in the world again, I would just have like a few moments back with my mom, or I'd have like a day with her, any amount of time with her again, that would be it. And so for me, being able to write about a character that was going back to her mom, and I loosely, it was loosely inspired by my mom, and then the main character loosely inspired by me. It just, for me, that was awesome. And I was able to heal a lot of that pain and suffering that I had had with my mom, and felt in missing her. So for me, that was surrendering to it, and then I was able to help heal part of that process. And then, so that's one example of how you can surrender. So I was pushing, trying to write this other story. It wasn't happening. I surrendered and said, what's something else that I could do that feels good for me? And you'll know if it feels good for you because it'll sit well within you. So if you are not regularly meditating or in touch with your intuition, how you can gauge this to know whether or not you're really listening to yourself. Because in my mind, surrendering is really listening to yourself and listening to your intuition. Is just sit with yourself, and as you come up with an idea or a thought that you want to do, just see, does your body constrict? Does it get tight? Does your stomach get really tight? Is it upsetting to think about? Or do you all of a sudden just relax? Does it feel good? And you're like, hey, this is great. If it's, hey, this is great, then you know that you're on the right path. Your intuition, that's your intuition. That's your body telling you, hey, this is the right thing to do. If it's like, then no, that's your body. That's your body warning you. So our body is like, we have all these different things within us that tell us, what is right, what is wrong, what's good for us, what's not good for us, all that kind of stuff. And when your body relaxes, that's your body telling you, hey, yeah, this is a good thing. If it goes like this, it's not. So just keep that in mind when you're telling your story, when you're writing, because the more you start listening to yourself and the more you start listening to your body, you'll start making better choices, stronger choices, and you'll be faster and quicker when you do it. So that's just a little tip there to be thinking about with that, okay? So another thing to share with you is surrender. So that's one that you could surrender. Maybe if the way that you're telling the story isn't working and you're feeling your body constrict, like it's no, this isn't working. Okay, try on maybe a different way of telling the story, a different genre for the story, something like that, and see if your body relaxes, because that's your intuition telling you, hey, okay, this is a good way to do it. So listen to your intuition, that'll help you. Something else that you can do. So this is something that I do with dialogue too. So I like to surrender when it comes to dialogue, and I'd like to just listen to my characters and see what's happening. A lot of times when I was first starting to write, and I know I've talked about this before in another video, is that I would write and I'd be like, I want it to say this, and I want it to say this, and I get so hung up on wanting it to say something that one time I literally spent 2 days trying to figure out this one sentence that this character was saying, and it was so silly because I literally wasted 2 days of my life, when if I had just listened to myself, in the back of my mind, I was just hearing this thought that was going over and over in my head, and I was thinking, oh, this is just so ridiculous. I cannot believe that I'm thinking this. Hold on just a sec. Oh, okay. Someone's saying hi. So in the back of my mind, I was thinking I could not possibly believe that I was actually thinking of this. And then after 2 days of wasting my time trying to come up with some other thought, I finally said, okay, I have no other options. I've exhausted all my other options. Let me just try this and see if it works. I put it in there, what seemed so absolutely ridiculous, and guess what? It worked just fine. So my point is listen to your intuition. If something keeps coming up to you over and over again, please listen to it. It's your intuition telling you, hey, this is a better choice. And if you're really in the zone, you'll start picking up on that faster and faster, more and more, and then you'll start writing faster too. So this is one of my big tips in terms of how I write faster, is I listen to my intuition, I surrender more, and I really pay attention to those thoughts that keep reoccurring. If I keep noticing something while I'm out during the day, I go, okay, I know that that's answering some question for me. And so as this happens in our life, it happens in your writing as well. It's just a good practice to get into. So that's another way that you can use surrendering for writing. So that's 2 tips so far, or 2 ways that you can do surrendering for writing. That's for dialogue. And then also the last one I was going to share with you is, here's another example. Surrender and really listen. So some people feel like they aren't writers if they don't write every single day. And that's not true. You are a writer if you sit down and you declare yourself a writer and you write. Okay? It starts with you. You need to own it. That's all it is. Be a writer and own it. It starts there. So whether you write every day or whether you write once a month, whether you write once every 2 months, whether you write once every 2 weeks, it really doesn't matter as long as you have some kind of practice that you've said, hey, I'm a writer and I'm going to do it this many times, and you've committed it to yourself in some way. Okay? Only you know what's going to work best for you. So I say that, I preface all this with, for me, I had been writing every single day for years. For me, writing is like breathing air. It's like if I don't write, I get a little bit crazy in the head. So I have to write. So for me, I knew that I wanted to write this story when my son and I went overseas and I was homeschooling him. And I knew that there was going to be some kind of story that came out of it. And I wasn't sure what it was, and I wasn't sure how to structure it. And traditionally, I'm a scriptwriter by nature and also a fiction writer. So I tend to write from character, but I've developed a way to write with structure. So I've worked on that. And so when I start writing, I have a very strong structure of where I'm going, what I'm doing. I know my characters, I know my theme, and then I play within it. So what happened this one time, and this is where I had to surrender, was that I had to surrender because I hadn't written a memoir before, and I'm about 40,000 words into my 80,000 word memoir. Yay! Woo! I'm halfway there. So that being said, I knew I wanted to write about this trip that we went on, and I just wasn't sure what the angle was. And so again, I listened to my intuition. I surrendered to what this feeling was welling up within me, and I just started writing. Anytime I had the feeling that I needed to write, I just sat down and wrote, and I'd say, okay, I'd ask myself a question. And actually there's a woman, I can't remember her name. I just watched a video. She's amazing. If I remember her name, I'll share it with you. And she had said that asking yourself a question hijacks your brain. And what it does is it takes away all the fear and it makes you answer the question. Like, you can't stop until you get that question answered. And so I hadn't realized it, but this is what I've been doing for years, is I would ask myself a question, and until that question was answered, I wouldn't move on to something else. So yay, you need to do that. If you are stuck on some part of your writing, ask yourself a question that you need to have answered for it, and it will come to you. So this is what I would do. I would ask myself a question: what do I need? What is this chapter about? And I'd wait until I got a feeling on what it was about, and then I just start writing. I just wrote. And I wrote probably about 20,000 words like that. And I wasn't sure. I was like, I don't even know what I'm writing, because frankly, I don't write like this. I tend to write stream of consciousness just to get started, but not typically when I'm writing my books, because I have definitely keep myself corralled and I let my intuition work in a different way. But this was a different process for me because I was writing a memoir. So what I did was I let myself write those chapters, and then at one point it just started flowing and flowing. I mean, it was literally falling. It was so much was coming out of me. I woke up one morning and literally my hand was actually writing. I remember waking up and the chapter was saying itself over and over again in my head, and I just had to get up and just start writing it down. Like, it was just coming out of me. And then we had a big family issue that came up, and there was some really horrible stuff that happened to my son, and I went from writing 5,000 words one day to writing nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was spent emotionally, spiritually, physically, just everything about me was exhausted because of what had happened to my son. And I knew that I knew that I was not able to write at that point. So I had to give myself permission to surrender to what we were going through as a family, to make sure he was safe and he was okay. And I knew that it was important in my healing and for his that I not write and just give myself to whatever it was that we were going through. And now that I've stepped out of it, I'll be writing again soon, but I have other stuff that's on my plate. And of course I'm like, I just want to write, but I know I have other stuff to do. So I say this to you because surrendering is important. Surrendering is also listening to yourself and knowing what is best for you. Surrendering is not making yourself do something, controlling your life and saying it's got to be this way, it's got to be this way, it's got to be this way. Surrendering is going with the flow, knowing that you'll get there, taking steps to do so, which is what I continue to do and what I'm still continuing to do. And I do little things here and there. I'm still reworking the structure on the story. And I have faith and I trust that it will all be there. And what happens is when you do that, eventually you get to the place and it's all gonna come in line. So what I did was, after I did all that writing and I knew that I had to give into that experience, I let myself have that experience. And let yourself have those experiences. If you need to have those, there's a reason why you're going through them. Have them, acknowledge them, thank them for being there. There's a gift in there for you somewhere. Have it. It's good for you. It's good for your writing. And at some point you will move on from it and you'll be stronger, you'll be wiser, and you'll be like, wow, okay, I got through that. Now I can go to this next place. So after I went through all that, then I looked at all of it. And again, this is a different writing process than I'm normally used to. I said, okay, what do I have here? What story have I been trying to tell? What has my subconscious been trying to get me to tell? And I looked at it, I was like, oh, okay, I got it. I looked at everything I had written. I was like, all right, it's very clear what's going on here. And then I went back and I did my traditional structure of what I usually do with my fiction stories. And I structured it because it's so important to have structure in there. I've mentioned this before, it's the bones of your body. You've got to have some structure in there. So I did that. And now I'm at the place where I have different chapters that I need to fill in. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. But again, this is new for me, and I keep telling myself when little pings of fear and nervousness come up, I go, you know what, Gavin? You've got this. You know how to do this. You've done it before. You can do it again. You have all the answers. Take a deep breath, one step at a time. And I share the same with you. You have got this. Just surrender into it. Let everything else go. You've got this. You know how to do it. Listen to yourself. Believe in yourself. Okay? I believe in you. All right? So that's my big talk for tonight on surrendering to your story. The more you start listening to your intuition, the more intuition and ideas and answers will come to you, and stronger choices will come to you. So that's my big tip tonight. So surrender. Any questions before we go? Unfortunately, I don't think I can see the, oh, you know what? Maybe, let me pull this up and see if I can see any questions. Hold on just a second. So surrender. Here we go. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Oops, what's going on? Here we go. Is this it? Yep, okay, hold on. Here we go. I'm gonna see if any more questions are in there. I'm having a hard time seeing them where I'm at right now. Here where I'm videotaping, let me see if I see any questions. No questions. I don't see any more questions. So if you have any last questions, oh, it looks like we have a little bit of a delay. If you have any last questions, please go ahead and write them down below, and I'm happy to answer them. In the meantime, I just want to, yeah, that was, okay, we have like maybe about a 20 to 30 second delay. But anyway, I just want to thank all of you for joining me. I love having you here. I believe in you. That story that's within you, you can tell it. If you like coming here, I'll be here again next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can also sign up for more free videos. I have a really cool freebie coming up in the next couple days on my website at soulsisterswrite.com if you sign up to join my my list. And it's going to be one of the things that I do that helps keep me motivated from page 1 to the very last page. And except yours is so much prettier than the one that I do. I made it super nice for you guys. And feel free to join me over there. I'm happy to go ahead and share that with you. That's my, I think I'm calling it the book writer's BFF for motivation. So I will be getting that up in the next couple days, and I'm happy to give that to anyone who wants to sign up for my email list. And thank you again for joining me. I will see you next week right here at Soul Sisters Write Facebook group page. And thanks, thanks for being here. I love you tons. Thanks for joining me. Mwah.